Let's get into the balance sheet. I don't really talk about balance sheets very often, but since tonight we have two companies and we're going to be talking about both companies, I felt like we should just go over the balance sheet, a couple of items from the balance sheet. This isn't the entire balance sheet, but when you listen to an earnings call, when you are trying to evaluate if a stock is a company that the stock you're investing in is making money, you want to look at a couple of things, and the things that I look for are tangible. Like I want to see, I don't want to see future projections. I don't want you to tell me how much you think this money is going to make in this company is going to make in the future. I want you to tell me how much money this company has on hand right now. How much money is it making this year? How much money did it make last year? And if you watched the previous live streams, I focused on revenue and earnings, and that is why, because the stock price doesn't always reflect the value of the company. So for me, I like to look at the balance sheet. I like to dig into that. I don't cover it often, but I do talk about items on the balance sheet, or give you some type of standpoint to really just measure the company. And tonight I'm going to talk about total cash. I'm going to talk about cash per share. I'm going to talk about total debt. I'm going to talk about the debt to equity ratio, and I'm going to cover book value and the current ratio. I'm going to do that real quick because we still have to get to Airbnb. But Delta Airlines Inc., DAL symbol, their total cash is $15.23 billion. That means that they don't have that actually, they don't have it just sitting around. They're not holding it to their ear. They're not putting it on the table like Money Mayweather. But they have that cash. And when you talk about cash on a balance sheet, total cash generally equals the cash that a company is holding within their accounts. It generally refers to liquid assets that they can cash out, or liquid assets that they can actually trade in for money within 1 year. So within that total cash, you have money that is in the company's savings accounts or checking accounts or whatever their equivalent as a multi-billion-dollar company. Wherever they keep their money, they have that cash on hand, even if it's in the form of a treasury note, which United States Treasury is one of the favorite places where people hold their assets at. And a lot of countries, when people say like we owe China money, we don't actually owe China money. China brought our treasuries, and we have to pay interest on those debt securities. So that's just a sidebar. But total cash refers to accounts receivable. So when somebody contracts a service and they're waiting, they send them the bill and they're waiting for that money, as long as that money is supposed to be paid within less than a year, then that technically qualifies as cash. That's accounts receivable. It actually includes inventory. It includes materials. Mostly when you talk about materials, it's raw materials. In this case, Delta Airlines, they don't have a lot of raw materials because they are airline. Their product is a service. But if Delta Airlines owns some type of strategic gas reserves, then that will be incorporated in that. Not really familiar with the airline industry, so I don't know what an airline would qualify as a material, but raw materials, things like steel or coal or aluminum, anything that it has value and can be sold or that they can cash out of real quick qualifies as total cash. And since this company, this airline, has $15.23 billion worth of cash or cash equivalents, when you divide that by their outstanding shares of stock, you get their cash per share. And their cash per share really just tells you, how much cash as a share owner you're entitled to for every share that you own. And Delta Airlines case, you are you qualify for 23.88 cents of cash of their income per share of stock that you purchase. And that's the most recent quarter. That's the most recent number, or one of the most recent numbers that I'm discussing today about their total cash per share, their cash per share. And that's really, really important to think about, because if this is a $40 stock today, that daily trading range at market close, if this is a $40 stock today, then that cash per share entitles you to 23.88 cents of cash. And then you have the total debt. And this is where it gets kind of funny, because I mentioned earlier that Delta Airlines had $15.23 billion of cash or cash equivalents on hand. Their total debt is $36.42 billion. So technically, they have twice the amount of debt on their books than they have cash, which is not bad, because a lot of people have debt, a lot of companies have debt, and if you are an airline and you're not running flights because of the pandemic and you didn't make as much money as you thought you would last year, yes, you would have some debt on your books. But I didn't get into the breakdown of who they owe money to and what type of debt they have. So this could all be debt from, or it could be a large portion of this debt could be related to the PPP loans or whatever equivalent these big companies receive. The airlines, they received a bailout, everybody say, but it wasn't really a bailout. They had some forgivable loans from the government, so some of that could be in the form of forgivable loans. I'm not an expert in Delta stock. I don't really watch the company that closely, but it's always important to consider what type of debt do they hold. That could be company bonds. It could be, that could be distributed in the form of 30-year or 25-year interest payments to their bondholders. So it's always important to look at that debt to equity, how much cash or cash equivalents they have compared to their total debt. And that brings me to the debt to equity ratio. And Delta Airlines has a debt to equity ratio of 1.1717. So take it for what it is. Just their debt to ratio is 1.17 pretty much. After that, you get to a repeating decimal. And compared to other airlines, that isn't too bad. It's a little bit high compared to Alaska Airlines and Southwest. Alaska Airlines have a debt to equity ratio of 0.7428, and Southwest has a debt to equity ratio of 0.407.